think that means everybody should be able to make their way in as we go. So hello, friends, everyone who's here today. Welcome to Book Chat's All the Feels, a reading recommendation program that will cover all of the different emotions. My name is Jenny. I'm going to be your host tonight, which means if you run into any sort of technical difficulties, if you have any questions, or if after the fact we forget to send out the email, that's all on me. If you love the books today, that is all on our four wonderful presenters today who are going to share their favorite books with you. You will see a notification pop up on your screen at some point that just says that the meeting is being recorded. That's just so if anybody misses the meeting, they still have a chance to go back and read all of these excellent books, or if you need those titles so that you can access them again. So Book Chat's All the Feels begins now. Now, before we get started with our reading recommendations for the day, I did want to throw a few announcements into the chat for us. Basically, I want to make sure everybody who's participating today gets some idea of what else is going on at the Des Moines Public Library. One of the biggest things that's starting up this month is we have received a National Endowment for the Arts grant to do a Big Reads program. What that means is basically everyone at the Des Moines Public Libraries is reading the same book. You may have heard of it before. It's Fahrenheit 451. So if you read it in school and you loved it, or you read it in school or you never got around to reading it, this will be your chance. There are going to be book clubs happening at nearly every branch. A couple of the branches are doing read-alikes. So definitely check with your branch to see what's going on. I'm also throwing into the chat both the link to our NEA grant page so that you can find out about all the awesome programs and book clubs going on, but also a link to the event where Ray Bradbury's authorized biographer, a guy who sat with him years, he's going to come and do a keynote address for us talking about Fahrenheit 451, about Ray Bradbury himself. That program is going to be on September 29th at 7 p.m. So you won't want to miss it. And I've put a link in the chat so that you can get signed up today if you are so inclined. There's a whole bunch of excellent things happening at Des Moines Public Library. Of course, Book Chat is the organization, the group that's here to help you find your next read and to lead tonight's program. So Book Chat is ready to help you find that read in a whole bunch of different ways. Everything from book bundles, where we'll give you a random assortment of books that we think you might like, to an actual book chat, which is where you tell us what you've liked in the past, and we find books that will be wonderful recommendations for you personally. So if you've never used our book chat service before, it's always a great time to start. I've thrown a link in the chat there for you as well. So tonight we're going to talk about all sorts of different books you might enjoy. Some of those will help, hopefully, but anything else you might need, Book Chat is there to help you find. And if you already are great at finding books, so great, in fact, that you like to share them with friends, you can either join one of our Des Moines Public Library book chats, or I'm sorry, book clubs. We have a lot of them. Some of them are in person, some of them are virtual, whatever your comfort level is. But if you host your own book club, we do also have book club sets, which let you check out 10 different copies of the same book. You can reserve them online, so I've put a link in that chat as well. I have now been talking at you very quickly, very fast, so I will save a few announcements for the end, and we'll jump right into this book chat, all the feels. So it's time for you to stop listening to Jenny, who you can text in the chat if you have any questions, problems, technical difficulties, or recommendations of reads that you'd like us to see. But as I said, this program isn't about me, it's about our experts. Tonight we have 4 experts who are going to share with us all of the different feels that they love to feel. Jess is going to talk to us about books that will emotionally devastate us and ruin our lives. Brooklyn is going to take us back with books that make us feel young again. Janae is going to haunt our dreams with books that will rob us of sleep and terrify us. And then Sarah is going to end us on a high note with happy books that aren't just romances, although some of them will be. No need to be defensive. They're excellent. So to kick us off today, we are going to start off with some sad books, which brings us to Jess. Hey, Jess, how's it going?
Good. How are you? I'm not sad. I'm doing great.
Not sad. You're doing great. So Jess, what is it about sad books that you love the best?
I think the 2 main reasons that I really like sad books. The first one for sure is that if a book emotionally devastates me, it's going to stick with me for a long time, and I'm more likely to recommend it or talk about it or share it with people. So that's a huge thing. And I think another thing is that it does help me process my own emotions. And also, sometimes I just like the emotional release of sobbing on my couch with a book in my hand and a cat in my lap. Like, I don't know, what else can I say? Like,
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Jess, you've got some great recommendations for us, so I'm not going to hold us back any longer. We'll go ahead and let you get started. What have you got for us today?
I am going to start with a book called Betty by Tiffany McDaniel. And so I just picked up Betty on a whim. It had a really beautiful spine, as you can see by its cover. And I opened it, and the first line is, "A girl comes of age against the knife." And I was like, hello, yes, please, I want more. So Betty is about about a girl born in 1954 to a Cherokee father and a white mother. She's the sixth of 8 siblings. And she ended up inheriting the most of her father's Cherokee features. So she really has a tough time like blending in and trying to find her place in the world. Basically, it's just a story of the family through years of poverty and struggle and violence and cruelty. She does find solace in the comfort of her family and her father's beautiful stories that he tells. And in turn, teaches her to tell her beautiful stories. Anyone who's read this book will not exaggerate when they say it destroyed them, and that they've never read anything quite like it. But every time the story broke my heart, it did like put it back together again. There are positive things. Betty has beautiful connection with her sister. Her relationship with her father is so lovely. And despite everything that happens to Betty, she does persevere. My mom wrote a review for this book on Goodreads, and her review was just, "This book will stay with me for a while." She's not wrong. So Betty, 5 out of 5 tissues. It's lovely. The next book I'm going to talk about is Just Kids by Patti Smith. It's just a memoir. It's kind of a wild card choice because it's not definitively a sad book, but it begins as this beautiful love story and ends as an elegy. Patti Smith and Robert Mapplethorpe were roommates, soulmates, friends, muses, briefly lovers, but their long-standing, mostly platonic relationship is something that I've always found really beautiful and inspiring. Patti Smith evolves as this poet and performer and singer-songwriter. Robert Mapplethorpe is this incredible photographer. But this is how they just started out, as just kids. Like, the story is their life together in New York, being young and having fun at like Max's Kansas City and the Hotel Chelsea, and really just like how their friendship evolves over this like respect and deep mutual understanding. Mapplethorpe died of AIDS at age 42, and reading about Patti's grief is so heartbreaking. Her writing, so much like her music, is so lyrical and moving, and you end up kind of grieving along with her, not just for the loss of Robert, but for the loss of so many visionary artists we lost so young to AIDS. So this one, while it won't destroy you, it is pretty sad, and I'm going to go 3 out of 5 tissues for this one. And so that's Just Kids by Patti Smith. The next book I want to talk about is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This book gets a lot of buzz. I think it stays kind of on the New York Times bestseller list. People talk about book TikTok, and like lots of people recommend it. And I can see where you look at it and you're not like, oh, this book is sad, but trust me, it will emotionally destroy you. It's basically the story of the fall of Troy. You don't have to have read the Iliad or know a lot about mythology, but more specifically, it does talk about the tale of Achilles and Patroclus. It basically retells Achilles' story from the point of view of his best friend and lover, Patroclus. They grow up together, they fight together, they learn together, they develop together. They are inseparable, they rely on each other, and they are just passionately in love. In the end, you get to hear all about like the fall of Troy and the war, and how Patroclus wanted to end the war, but Achilles just wanted glory. Tragedy ensues, and we are left with another grief-filled ending. When I tell you that I open mouth cried through the end of this book, I am absolutely not lying. The way that Miller describes their love is just so dang beautiful, and it made the ending even more devastating. I do consider this a real genre jumping book. Like, it's not historical fiction, it's not a romance book, it's not literary fiction, it's maybe all of those. And if you would think, I don't know, this book's not for me, you're probably wrong. So you should pick it up. And this is 4 out of 5 to choose. So it's a good one. That's The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. The Prophet by Robert Jones Jr. is the next book I want to talk about. Basically, at the center of this book is a love story between 2 enslaved men, Samuel and Isaiah. Their relationship is always just kind of like okay with everyone. Throw all the, the slaves on their plantation, which is aptly named MC. That's the name of the plantation, but it does eventually set off this devastating chain of effects as this fellow enslaved man seeks to gain favor by preaching about the religion, the gospel, and then people start turning on each other, and their love, which was once really simple, is now seen as sinful and is a clear danger to the plantation's harmony. Tension builds, and basically there's this climactic reckoning. And what the prophet does so well is it just masterly reveals the pain and suffering of the inheritance of slavery. The body keeps the score. But there are moments of very, very beautiful, beautiful parts, and like the power of love, the very reminiscent to Toni Morrison. I think his writing is very reminiscent. It's got those little wordplay, it's beautiful, lyrical, and that the forbidden love, it really got me with this one. So that is The Prophet by Robert Jones Jr., and that's 3 out of 5 to choose. So the last book I want to talk about is one of my all-time favorite books. It does talk about a sensitive topic. We do talk about suicide here, so if that's something that's triggering to you, it's not a book I recommend, but I think that it is beautiful how it works with grief and loss. It's at its heart, it is about 2 sisters, Elfrida, who's this like world-renowned pianist. She's glamorous, she's wealthy, she's happily married, but she's acutely depressed and she wants to die. And her sister Yolandi, who's like divorced and broke and like sleeping with all the wrong men and just kind of like a hot mess, really, if we're being honest. But the book starts off with Elfrida's latest suicide attempt, and it's 3 weeks away from this like opening of a highly anticipated tour. And so Yolandi makes it her mission to save her sister, even though her sister's like begging to basically die. One of the parts of the book that really struck me is there's this line that says, "She wanted to die and I wanted her to live, and we were enemies who loved each other." And so it really becomes clear that Elfrida is going to achieve her wish at any cost, and Yolanda's kind of forced to consider whether the most loving response would be to help her do so. It's just this profound reflection on the limits of love and those like unimaginable challenges that we all experience as like fractured adults. And it is unsettling because like, how can a novel about suicide not be? But it's so honest and it's so compassionate, and it just really like provides this existential balm. I can't find a better word to describe it than that. Maybe like 10 out of 5 to choose. It's a beautiful book, and I really do recommend it. It's All My Puny Sorrows by Miriam Taves.
Oh my goodness, that one sounds particularly tragic and also kind of like the one I want to read the most.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book, and Taves writes a lot of really interesting books. She is Mennonite, and so a lot of her characters are Mennonite. And this was actually, her sister did commit suicide 10 years prior. So I think this was probably a little bit of a cathartic novel for her as well.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned catharsis is kind of one of the reasons that you like sad novels, that it kind of helps us explore and figure out our own feelings, which makes me think a little bit about how teen novels always seem very, very dramatic. Brooklyn, feel free to correct me on that one. I wonder if there's if that's a thing that, if different age groups that appeals to even more so, but oh man, adult books.
Yeah.
That are sad.
Yeah. These are all really, they're sad for many different reasons. I do feel like I have a slight theme of like unrequited love or love that is ended with death, but it's, they're all really sad and really beautiful, and they're worth reading to cry on your couch with your cat or your dog or a cup of coffee in your lap.
Sounds both cozy and magical. I'm not gonna lie. All right, friends, what do we think sad books? Yay, nay? How do we feel about sad books?
I am not normally a sad book person, as you'll learn later when I do happy books. But I did Song of Achilles as an audiobook, and I both recommend and don't recommend. I mean, it's beautiful and the narrator is amazing, but I usually listen to audiobooks in my car, which is a terrible decision when reading. I've done this twice. This and a Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. Both of them I've had to like pull over and like cry in my car.
That makes sense. That's right.
I feel like the best sad books are the ones that you're automatically like, look, I know these 3 people who should not read this book. Like, my biggest goal in life is to get other people to read Dear Edward, because it is just beautiful and moving. And the first thing I did after I finished it was email the author to be like, you have destroyed my life and it was beautiful and I appreciate you. And the second thing I did was text my sister to be like, do not read that book. You will not, do read that book, but do not read that book. But everyone else here should read Dear Edward is all I'm saying. Anyone else? Books you've loved that are terribly sad? Books you've loathed that are terribly sad? Does it make a difference if the sad book has an animal in it?
I will not read books with animals for that reason.
Yeah, I actually am not. There's a couple books recently I picked up that had like an animal death, and I just was like, nope, I have to put this down.
I have
to read Dear Edward. Yes, it's definitely worth it. Also, you liked, I forgot which one you liked, but you liked one of the books that we mentioned.
I think it was Just Kids. Patty said.
It's such a beautiful book. She's such a great writer. Not surprising.
I was fine with animals until I got a dog. I was 25. So like, it was my first pet ever. And now I can't. Like before this book, whatever. No, but now.
Fair.
It's been a rule I've had since I was like 9.
What do you think, Shanae? Animals, yay or nay in your sad books?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Do you like animals in your sad books or no animals in your sad books?
Yeah, I like animals in my sad books. Like I said, Charlotte's Web made me cry. Definitely, it was a tearjerker. I just cried like a baby.
Like Where the Red Fern Grows, like come on, like we're talking like childhood sad animal books, like. Whew.
Yeah.
Charlotte's Web is the one that ruined all animal books for everybody.
They make you read it too young. Oh, Joshua likes The Prophet. Nice.
Very excited, yes. I generally stay away from sad books because I don't enjoy sad feelings. I'm very excited to read that.
Excellent. You have to be in the right frame of mind to pick up a sad book, I feel like. Because
that is true.
You can't. I don't know how you audiobook in the car a sad book and then get out and the next thing.
Usually it's by mistake. I don't know that it's going to be this sad until it is that sad.
You don't think that, you don't look at that book and be like, that's going to emotionally destroy me.
No.
But it, it does.
But Joshua, as long as you read it at the right time, it'll be.
I will take that challenge.
I support it. Oh, hey, speaking of challenges, the reading challenge 2021 reading challenge is still going on. There's prizes. And the prizes are money. So if you haven't already signed up, there's still time. You just have to read 12 books. They do fit into certain categories. Anything we mentioned today is one of those categories. So the link in the chat. This time, not in the chat to everyone in waiting room, because I learn as we go. So, all right. So we've talked about sad books. I'm feeling a little traumatized, but don't worry. Again, we will end on a happy note. But we also talked about the books in childhood that devastated us, which takes us back a little bit. Hey, Brooklyn, youth books, you're going to tell us all about them. Brooklyn, talk to me for a second about this. I feel like young adult and children's books often get overlooked by adults. Why? Why do you think that is?
I think that people think that we've aged out of them, and that's not entirely true. I think that they bring a lot to the table. The main one being is that the plot is not convoluted. My beef with adult fiction is that sometimes that plot takes me places I don't care to go. I want to get my plot, I want to get my character growth, and I want to get out. And so for that reason, I really do prefer YA. I also love like big emotions. and stupid boyfriends. And I just love an overdramatic teenager who makes things worse for themselves because they don't know better.
Fair. I feel like teenagers have an excuse to do it, whereas sometimes we make our lives harder and it's our own fault and we better. All right, Brooklyn, take us back. Tell us about books that will make us feel young again. This one was devastating.
This one is devastating. It's my first book. I'm going to talk a little bit about, we're going to have YA, we're going to have adult, we're going to have some middle ground in here, but we're really going to channel our inner childhood reader with some of these novels. The first one is The Jellico Road by Melina Marchetta. This book takes us to small town Australia where Taylor Markham has been a resident of a boarding school since her mom abandoned her at a 7-Eleven. She is now in her last year. She's a senior. She's head of her house. And we meet her around the time that she is abandoned by her new unofficial caretaker, Hannah. So she starts to she launches herself on this really low stakes mystery of where she's gone, any of her past. And she reads this manuscript that Hannah leaves behind. And she learns that her ties to Hannah and this school are much deeper than she had thought. This book has all of my favorite things. We've got boarding schools. We've got like a secret students only territory war between the townies and the school and the cadets. We have enemies who have to collaborate for the greater good. And we have like this really messy mystery where all these loose ends that come together in a way that's going to ruin your life and then wrap it all back up together again. The reason why I really love this book and really think that it makes me feel young when I read it is that it reminds me what it's like to be a teenager when you have like this unending well of these unbearable, big, deep feelings and emotions and how strong your ties to other people can be because of that. This also has one of my favorite friend groups of all times, and you're going to cry with them and for them, and they're going to heal your heart back up together again. 5 out of 5 tissues. I'm going there. I'm stealing the rating scale. So this next book was, it was a 4 out of tissues book for me. It is Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. We have a much older protagonist in this one. I believe she's like 28 or so. And she is going to teach us that coming of age moments will happen our whole lives and not just when we are teenagers. This book was pitched to me a million times on Book TikTok as being about a girl who goes to Vegas and marries a stranger and then goes to live with her. But there's a lot more happening here because we meet her when she's finishing her doctoral program and she's jobless, she's aimless, she doesn't know what to do or what to feel. And so her kind of out from her situation is reconnecting to this woman that she married and never spoke to again and moving across the country to live with her. But she's also in a position where she kind of has to face her inner loneliness. And this book's really going to explore like how lonely children turn into lonely adults. And we really have to watch her challenge those parts of herself and challenge her relationship with her father. And this book will remind you of any transitionary period you've ever had, specifically like after like high school graduation or like college graduation, if you attended, where you're looking at your future and no one's prepared you for what's next and you just feel like a child. And you are really going to cry along with Honey as she kind of faces that loneliness. And it made me feel like I wanted to call my mom and be like, do you want a hug? You want to come over and like cook me dinner or something? So I would definitely pack some tissues for this one. But our next one is super creepy. I loved it very much. So we've all grown up on stories like Narnia or Harry Potter, where a child stumbles upon a magical land or reality. But we never saw any stories about what would happen to those kids if they were kicked out and they had to face the real world without any magic again, right? So in this one, Every Heart a Doorway by Sheenan McGuire, this concept is explored at this boarding school called Eleanor West Home for Wayward Children. And it's for children who have been kicked out of their magical land, and they're having issues readjusting to the normal world. And specifically, we meet this girl named Nancy, who had spent time in this kind of Hades and Persephone's themed world, the land of the dead, where essentially her thing was that she would stand like a statue for these like immortal beings for days on end. And she loved it there. She was so passionate. And now that she's in a real world, she can't connect to people. Everything's way too busy. She feels really unmoored. Unfortunately, she does find a sense of purpose, but that's solving the murders of her new boarding school mates. They start disappearing or being murdered one by one, and she has to figure out who the killer is before, she's next. And her really driving force is finding her land or stopping the killer, because she does not want to die on Earth. But I just thought that this book is a really great segue for those of us who loved those magical lands and fantasies as kids, but also want to read something a little bit more adult and creepy, and kind of segue into, this is one of my segue books into adult fantasy. Oh man, this one is my favorite book of all time. It's called The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. And for me, it was a book that made me remember experiencing magic for the first time in a novel. And I've heard it described as like a love letter to kids who only read fantasy. We meet a character named Zachary Ezra Rollins, who is at his college library during winter break, and he finds a book on a shelf that has a collection of short stories. He gets about 3 chapters in when he reads a story that he realizes about himself in on a day where he discovers a door where there shouldn't be, and he chooses to walk away from the door because he's not ready for the adventure yet. But now, as an adult who's found this story that's about him, even though he's never told anybody this story, he launches on this great adventure trying to find the source of the book, and he finds a secret underground magical library. He finds silent acolytes and lost seas and lovers who pass notes under doorways across time. It's really a balm to your inner child, who's kind of been jaded by real life, I think, and is going to just launch you on an adventure that you don't know what's going to come next. And it's a really magical experience. Ooh, our last novel is a YA choice that is, can I say 7 out of 5 tissues? It also, I think, is a great book for the whole theme, because you are going to feel all of the feelings. We are going to meet Darius, a teenage boy, and Darius the Great is not okay, who is suffering from depression, unrealistic expectations from his out-of-touch father, bullying, and the added confusion of finding his own identity as a half-white American, half-Persian teenage boy. His dad is like this macho man who also has depression, but doesn't want to talk about that, and more wants to talk about his idea of what makes a good teenage experience. And it's really not lining up with poor Darius and what he needs, right? So in the novel, Darius and his family have to go to Iran to visit his family, and specifically his dying grandfather, who he's never met before. And he's in this strange, beautiful land that he knows belongs to him, but doesn't feel like it's his. And he kind of has to explore all of these issues that he's been having, because at the end of the day, he just really wants to feel okay. And so part of this journey is realizing that he's not feeling okay, and also admitting to the people around him that he's not doing okay. And it's a really beautiful and tragic thing to read, but it also, I think, reminds us of like how not okay some of us felt as teenagers, and just feeling, you're going to feel proud for yourself. You're going to feel proud for Darius. And even at the end, you're going to feel kind of proud for Darius's dad, which is some real growth that I wasn't expecting to feel at the beginning of that book. But you're going to do all of this with great descriptions of place and food. So much food that I still want to eat. And you are just going to fall in love with Darius.
I'm not gonna lie, listening to you talk about some of these books, either the YA ones or the ones that just kind of reference YA culture, makes me a little bit jealous, because I feel like when we were younger, there weren't this many great YA stories, like stories of teenagers and for teenagers, and showing the breadth of, like, it was all very one kind of teenager. And so it's just exciting to hear about all of these different ones. But I have never before heard of a person who found a magical door and walked away from it. So I'm definitely going to need to check that one out.
Yeah, and it's great because those novels are actually novellas. So low commitment.
Nice. I love a good short one.
Yeah, they're good. They're creepy. I love it.
Fabulous.
0 out of 5 tissues.
Oh, man. All right. So amongst those of us who are here today, are we fans of YA? Are there books from your childhood that made you the reader you are today? Tell me about the books you love.
I think that young adult books are incredible. I think that there is such a large assortment of YA books right now that are so important, and especially from the last, like, I don't know, the last decade. I don't know that I would say that there were any like YA books that like shaped me as a child, because I felt like they were all so like ridiculous. Give me a Fear Street and let me read it. Amazing.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and if you love modern YA, Brooklyn, who has just talked about all the youthful books, also leads a book club called YA for Adults. So it is all adults who love to read YA. And I'm not going to lie, the books that she picks are amazing and devastating, and except for the one that I didn't like, but all of them have been the best book I've ever read. So huge fans.
We're fun. It gets rowdy, especially when Jenny comes.
I like an argument. What can I say? Anybody reading anything YA or that makes them feel young currently?
I just finished a YA book, but it didn't make me feel young. It just freaked me out. It was one of those, like, it's called The Dead in the Dark by Courtney Gould, I think. Gould. So, sorry. I'm bad with titles. Good job, librarian Jess. But it's super creepy. What I think is really cool about YA now that I love so much that I definitely didn't have is that there's like such a large representation. Like, you know, like you were just talking about, is just there's like different, it's just not the same people that we read about when we were younger. And that was definitely The Dead in the Dark was that way. So I just really liked how there was like a lot of different representation of relationships and different races. And it was creepy. It was super good. So that was the last good YA book I read.
Excellent. It sounds like a lot of people like creepy books. Fear Street, Dead in the Dark. This is good news, because I believe the next thing we're going to do is find out about books that will keep us up at night with some terror. So Janae, why scary books? What is it about them?
For me, why scary books? It's something to just relate to. I love being scared, and I think people like a good scare, a safe scare where it's contained. You feel like it's fiction, so you can hold it in your hand, you can react with the book, and you know you're safe because it's in a book. But I think people genuinely like to be scared. I love to be scared at 6th grade, and I started reading Stephen King at 6th grade. So
And when you read your scary books, your scary books, when you read books that are frightening, do you prefer all the same kind of fear, or, are you exclusively one kind of horror reader? Do you like the underlying thrill? Do you like monsters, or is there more variety to what you read?
It just depends upon the description of the book and what it's about. I'm open to anything. I like vampires, I like serial killers, I like monsters, I love supernatural, things that go bump in the night. But the other thing is with horror is that it's not just about the monster, it's not just about the vampire. There's real situations that happen in life that are real that also create that sense of horror as well. I think people forget that when you're looking at horror, yes, you have the monsters, you have the creepy evil entity, but the evil entity also might be the neighbor next door, or things that are happening in real life, sexual abuse, trauma. That also creates a different type of horror as well.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I can't wait to hear what you've picked out from us, just given the few books that you've told me about outside of programming. So let's hear what you have to recommend.
Awesome. This first book is one of my favorites. I read this in 7th grade. It's called Dolores Claiborne by Stephen King. And Dolores is a woman living in Tall Island with her husband, Joe, and their daughter, Selena. This woman has lived a rough life. She is rough-tempered, rough-looking, and she is just foul-mouthed. I mean, she's never had a really, really good life. And she's married Joe. Joe is a very abusive man. He works hard, but he's very abusive, likes to come home and get tipsy drunk. But on the night of the eclipse, 30 years ago, something happens and Joe is found dead at the bottom of a well. Now, fast forward years later, Dolores is working as an in-home provider for a wealthy woman named Vera. And just yesterday in the book, she's accused of murdering Vera. And the constable, who is the town police officer, he just senses something is wrong. He senses it. He's like, I investigated you when your husband died 30 years ago. Why all of a sudden are you tied to this? And he's determined to get the answers. And Selena, who grew up and now is a reporter, comes home to defend her mother and find out what really happened, not just with Vera, but what happened with her father 30 years ago. It's gut-wrenching, it's compelling, it makes you angry, but then again, you find the peace within the book, and you see the mother-daughter relationship fall apart, but then come together in a way that's kind of a different kind of horror. King mixes the horror, but he also mixes these human moments that you can relate to the characters. So if you get a moment, pick up Dolores Claiborne, one of my favorites. The next book is Certain Dark Things by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. This is the actual first printing of it, and I'm going to show you. This is the newest cover of it. I had to buy it because I love the cover so much. We have one copy at Central, but this is the newest cover. But the story is about Domingo. Domingo is a 17-year-old teen. He picks up garbage for a living. He doesn't go to school in Mexico City, and he lives on the streets of Mexico City. And Mexico City is just running amok with vampire gangs. We're talking thirsty, blood-sucking, ruthless vampire gangs. And while he's picking garbage, he meets Atl, A-T-L. She is an Aztec vampire, and this girl has got it going on. She is beautiful, she's smart, she's dangerous. And Domingo is instantly hooked. So she brings him home to her apartment, and he starts to kind of take care of her. You know how Dracula had Renfield doing all of his dirty work? Domingo is that to Atl a little bit. And of course, he also provides a snack for her. So, but Atl has a story. She is trying desperately to hide from one ruthless vampire gang, and they want her dead. And you have to find out why they want her dead. She has no family to rely on. And so between her and Domingo, you have to wonder if she's going to be able to get out of Mexico City alive. And it is just a very dark, kind of a noir feeling of a book. If you like sexy, dangerous, and gory, complex, enriching stories, you got to pick up Certain Dark Things by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. The next book, oh, sorry, I'm just getting out the feels for this one. This one is called My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. He is getting a lot of press lately because of his previous books, The Only Good Indians and Night of the Mannequins. This story is about Jade. Jade is a 17-year-old high school senior. And let's face it, she is engrossed in 80s slasher films. She is a running encyclopedia of everything 80s slasher films. She's part Indian, and she lives in the town of Proof Rock with her father. Her father and his best friend are just drunk. They just like to get drunk. He's not a friendly figure in her life, and neither is his slimy friend who tries to kind of creep on her a little bit. So she is engulfed in this world of horror films, and she writes these kind of history of horror papers to her history teacher. And she's supposed to graduate this year, but she's one credit shy of graduating, all because of the history class that she just really doesn't like. But she's doing these extra credit horror papers to hopefully get her grade up and graduate. So while she's doing that, she's noticing that in this town, there's this little kind of development that is growing. And in the meantime, there's also these serial killings, these makings of serial killings that are happening. And she's noticing it. But everyone's just like, yeah, well, you just like horror. Yeah, that's just your thing. It's just, you got a wild imagination. But she's convinced that there's a serial killer on the loose. And she has to find a final girl to train to be that final girl to stop the killer. And there's so many turns in this. If you like 80s slasher films, if you like horror, if you like atmospheric horror, you got to pick up My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. Jess, I hope I did you proud, because she was looking forward to this book too. This is another great book that just came out. If you are into Final Girls and the whole slasher genre, this is called The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendricks. And this is about Lynette. Lynette has survived a horrible massacre that happened 22 years ago. She was impaled on antlers by this serial killer, and she survived. And so her life has just been this constant bubble of making sure she has weapons around, that she locks her doors. She has this step-by-step pattern of keeping herself safe. And one of the ways she is coping is she goes to a support group with other survivors who have survived serial killers or attempted serial killings. And Dr. Carol runs this group. And so there's 6 women who have survived. Well, one of them does not make it to the group. They find out through the social media that she's dead, that one of them is dead. And Lynette is convinced that someone is finding out where the final girls are and wanting to kill them. This book had so many twists and turns. You're just left with what? I was screaming that the whole time, and my husband looked at me like, what is wrong with you? But it is so gory. It's so great. It is a love letter to slasher films. So if you love slasher films, if you love seeing a final girl from her perspective tell the story, pick up Final Girl Support Group. You're going to love it, by Grady Hendricks. This last one is a favorite from last year. This is one of my other favorites. This is called Hide and Seeker by Dacre Herman. And it's about a little boy named Z. Z comes home changed. He went missing for an entire year. And so his mother decides to throw him a welcome home party. And she invites Justin and the other kids in the neighborhood to the party. And right away, Justin is noticing something's wrong. There's locks on Z's door. There's scratch marks on his body. Something has changed him. So while the party is happening, they decide, hey, let's play a friendly game of hide and seek. What can go wrong? Well, something does go wrong. And one of the kids go missing. And the person that's doing the kidnapping is this creepy figure called the Seeker. He kind of reminds me of the Slender Man. If you ever heard of the Slender Man, if you see the cover right now, yes, that is this. It is just, he's just creepy. He's downright creepy. And you don't want to play hide and seek. You don't want to play hide and seek because one by one, these kids start disappearing. And Justin and Quincy, they all have to find out who's taking the children and how they can get them back out of this weird, complex world. This book is awesome because not only does it provide the creeps and the scares, but you also see these kids form a camaraderie and a friendship. And I think that's sometimes missing in youth literature, just seeing how kids solve these complex situations and survive and have positive relationships. And it's awesome to see characters of BIPOC, Black Indigenous People of Color. So definitely choose Hide and Seeker.
I don't know. I wasn't sure I would be able to handle any of these. And yet I'm just like, I kind of need to try all of them. And then when I have bad dreams, I'm going to just have to text the entire time, let you know that it's all your fault. What do you think? Scary books. Yay, nay. Mornings only, evenings only.
Yay.
Yes.
I like scary books too. Like I Janae said, I just finished My Heart is a Chainsaw, which was I love too. I thought it was very, very well done. Also that title, can we just talk about that title? Like that is such a good book title. And then I also just finished another really good book called Revelator, which is this weird, scary horror book by Dale Gregory. So yeah, it's spooky season, right? So like, let's go scary books. Let's go.
You know, spooky season starts in September. It doesn't start in October. It starts in September. Let's face it.
Yes, of course.
September 1st.
At least.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe you can handle scary things if there is chocolate involved. So I'm okay with it. I just need to swing by the candy aisle first. Real quick question. Books or movies, which is scarier?
Books.
Definitely the books.
Yeah. I can't be left to my own imagination.
Yeah. It's dark. It gets dark real fast, right?
It does.
I don't know.
I don't know if I'm strong enough to read a horror book. A film, that's short, but a book, just from the description of that last one alone, I cannot sleep tonight. Just all of my lights in my house are being turned on.
Okay, that book did sound really scary. You're not wrong.
I read the book Christine, what was it, last year by Stephen King, and I had to read it with the lights on. And I got so scared, I felt like my house had bad juju vibes. I had to get the book out of I had to donate the book to Goodwill because I felt like I had some bad juju in my house, like bad vibes.
I'm so sad you didn't mention this to one of us so we could have found a copy to just like put it on your front doorstep the next day.
No, absolutely not. I will send it back. No, thank you.
Santa this year, just so you know.
No, thank you.
Oh, talk about scary books.
Nope.
Oh my goodness. Oh, well, my friends, we are drawing closer to the close, but it is not the close yet because I did promise I would end us on something positive so that everyone could sleep soundly tonight. So try to wipe the scary books from your mind for just 1 second. Sarah is going to cheer us up with some happy books. Sarah, why happy?
Well, Janae, you did such a good job talking about those books, and I'm going to read None of them. Zero. Like, I can't do it. For me, a book is all about escapism, which I know is true across the board. But I think in particular, happy books are great escapism. When I'm feeling down or sad or anxious, I turn to a book. And so I want it to be happy. I want to feel better when I'm done with it. I mean, my husband, huge horror fan. I make him tell me the endings of everything because I want to know, but I don't want to actually read it. But I love these books that make you feel like the Grinch. And that seems weird, but in the sense that like your heart gets 3 times too big by the time you finish the book. Like that's what I want when I get done with it. So that's why I like happy books.
I like it. Well, bring us some.
All right. All right. So the first one on my list is Dial A for Aunties by Jessie Q. Satanto. So this book is a complete romp. I laughed through the whole thing, which is a different kind of happy. You wouldn't think that though, based on the description. Just to give you a little taste, the first line is when Madeline Chan ends up accidentally killing her blind date. What? Oh, okay, I'm still here for it. Okay, let's keep going. But so the full phrase is after Madeline Chan accidentally kills her blind date, her mom, her 4 meddling aunties offer to help her get rid of the body, as good families should. But it's the same day that their family wedding business has the biggest event. It's on an island, and they run into her ex-boyfriend, all while trying to get rid of the body. Think Weekend at Bernie's when you think of this book, right? It has that vibe completely. But like when you start it, man, that tone is not what you're expecting at all. But like I said, I laughed through this entire thing. It is kind of a dark comedy in a lot of ways, but it's banter filled, and it's kind of really what we're willing to do for the family that we love, right? How far are you willing to go to make sure that people find happiness in your life, even if that means hiding a corpse? And what I loved is these aunties and mom, like no questions, none. Cool, yep, that's a thing, and we're gonna fix it. And I loved that. Also, this is going to be a Netflix show, I found out. It's the same creator as Fresh Off the Boat and Always Be My Maybe. So if you're into those as well. And lastly, isn't the cover amazing? Whoever said don't judge a book by its cover is wrong. So definitely pick up this book. All right, so changing up the vibe a little bit. This book asks, what do you do with a broken heart? Doesn't sound like a great start to a happy book, right? But that's exactly what Connor Knighton is contemplating in Leave Only Footprints, which is a nonfiction title. The year was 2016. His fiance had just left him. And it was also the 100-year anniversary of the national parks. So what does one man do? He, a freelance writer, pitches going to every single park in 365 days and writing about it for CBS This Morning. What ensues is this trek of rediscovery, which I really loved. And what I also liked about this book is each chapter is entitled with a feeling or an emotion or a place, which kind of really ties into tonight. So like love, mountains, silence. But what I like most is that Knighton reminds us how majestic these parks are and how they can make you feel whole and make you feel small and make you feel happy and make you feel all these things. And he kind of heals himself along the way, which is really lovely. He alternates between the park and the people he meets along the way and other reflections on life. And it allows us to ruminate on our own happy spaces. So maybe that's not a national park, it's your couch with your cat, it's a good book in your hand, a cup of coffee or tea. I read this as an audiobook and he does a great job. And I would especially recommend it for people, like I said, who are trying to find that happy space or feeling are a little adrift right now. Definitely pick up this book. Okay, my one romance book. You guys are so lucky. I just picked one. Okay. So again, a new vibe, a new kind of happy, because there's so many kinds of happy out there. And if you are an avid DMPL podcast listener, which I would highly recommend, I did talk about this in 2019 as one of my favorite books of the year. So it's the Bromance Book Club by Alyssa K. Adams. So for me, I need a preface though with romance books can be the epitome of happy, at least they are for me. I'm here for the journey, not the ending. So I don't mind that I know that everyone's going to end up happily ever after. I like it, kind of falls into that escapism again. But in this one I narrowed down to, it's not your typical romance structure. So pro baseball player, Gavin Scott, his life is falling apart. His wife wants a divorce. Tons of miscommunication all around. So desperate, Gavin finds help from an unlikely source, the Bromance Book Club. This is an all-male, very secretive romance book club. And the club uses romance books to try to woo their significant others, but also navigate the emotional moments in their lives and make transparent decisions about love and happiness. What I really liked about this book, and it's a series, so I just got done reading the 4th one in it, is that as much as it is about the romance, this group of guys is the opposite of toxic masculinity. They talk through their feelings, they talk through their emotions, they call each other out when they are making bad decisions. And I just it was so refreshing and new for a romance book. So I highly recommend it too if you kind of want to maybe try a romance and see what you think. This is a great kind of start into that genre. All right, Here for It by R. Eric Thomas. I get a different kind of book. This is a memoir in essays. So R. Eric Thomas is a writer for Elle magazine. He went viral on a tweet a few years ago and it kind of launched his career. But what I love about his writing is that he writes with big, bright emotions and he doesn't shy away from that. And a good chunk of his book is growing up at the intersectionality of being gay, Black, and Christian. And he's often searching for his community within these memoirs. And he just, oh my gosh, he has so much charm and there's so much pop culture in it. There's a point, and of course he explains it so much better because he's a writer, about, is the future worth it? And that doesn't sound super happy, but what I love about this book is every point along the way he decides it is. It doesn't matter the highs in his life, the lows in his life. He truly believes that tomorrow is another day and it only means it can get better for him. And that, any good Whitney Houston song, as if there is a bad Whitney Houston song, can fix most problems. And I read this as an audiobook, and he is the narrator and he is absolutely delightful. I felt like I was his best friend along this journey, learning more and more about him. So highly recommend. All right, the last one on my list is one of my all-time favorite books. It gives me all the feels. It makes me so heart happy. Everyone should read it. And it's Check Please by Nagozi Akazu. This is a graphic novel based on her very popular webcomic series. You can also find it online as well. If you want to read it immediately, before I finish, you can start it. So it's about Eric Biddy Biddle, who is a champion junior figure skater and vlogger who gets picked up by a college hockey team because he's so fast to play for them. Unfortunately, he is so scared of getting hit. So he, with the help of the captain of the hockey team, which he has a huge crush on, he learns to hit, he finds a community, and he finds a home with his teammates. And look at that face, and look at that pie. I mean, who doesn't want to read about this boy? I picked this book because, like I said, is the definition of heart happy. The artwork is adorable, the main character is adorable. But what I like most is this book depicts inclusion and acceptance as if it's the norm. right? It's not a big thing that we talk about in the middle of this book. It's not something he has to overcome. It just is. And that's true for all of the characters along the way. Everyone is given that grace, which unfortunately we know in real life is not always true. I've read this book at least 3 times. Again, it's a graphic novel, so I can sit down and read it real quick. But whenever I'm feeling down or sad, this makes me feel better. And I like the idea of also extended family, his teammates, all of them are just there to support each other along the way. I read this book originally in one sitting, and this is the first of 2 volumes. And then I had to wait for her to write the rest of it. So luckily they're both out and you don't have to go through that pain like I did. So please pick up Check Please by Nagozi Akazu.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm very grateful that you told me about that book after the second one came out, because I did not have to wait. I read them one right after the other, and they were lovely. I liked hockey in college, which I did not expect to do. And then but you don't have to like hockey to like that book.
Not at all, because I'm not a hockey fan either. But there's also a lot of pie, so that will also make up for it.
It's the perfect book. There's nothing. There's not a single wrong thing about it.
Totally laugh. It's very enjoyable. Quick read.
Okay, so like obviously I have to read it. I'm like the only one here who hasn't read it. I love this. I'm doing it. I'm checking it out tomorrow.
Put it on hold right now.
Yeah,
happening. I'm doing it right now.
All of our to be read lists just got like significant, which is both problematic and wonderful. I'm so excited. Hopefully everybody who attended also got some new books that they think sound interesting. If you did, excellent, get reading. If you didn't, don't forget, we're Book Chat. We are the recommended reads team, and we are here to help. So I dropped in the chat one more time so you don't have to dig for the link, how to get in touch with Book Chat to hook you up with your next great read, whether it is a book bundle where you're just like, throw me some mysteries and we do, or whether you're like, look, here is what I like, here is what I hate, find me something I'm watching. We will also make those personalized recommendations, or maybe you're already part of a book club and that book club is always struggling with what to read next. If that's the case, we have a new service called Book Chat Librarian, where you can have one of us or our colleagues on the Book Chat team come and talk to your book club about books that will appeal to your book club. So do check that out too. Or if you don't have a book club yet, no time like the present. We've got so many book clubs. Join us, but especially join Brooklyn's YA for Adults book club, because again, the books are great, except for last month's, but don't worry, we're done with that one. I hear the book is really good. I don't know. Sarah, I promised you could talk about one more happy book.
Oh yes, real quick. I know we've already gone over time, but I was told I couldn't do it in my little speech there because we talked about it so much. But now, oh my gosh, I only ever call it the Cerulean Sea. What's its full name?
House in the
House in the Cerulean Sea by C.J. Clune. Thank you. You gave me that great write-up. But everyone should read it. I won't talk about it. Look up the plot. It's amazing. And he's coming out with a new book as well called Under the Whispering Door. That one I was prepared for, which also sounds amazing. But it would have been my 6th book if I could have picked one more.
Oh my gosh,
it so does good. Give you all the feels for sure. I think it's like a book that just like it gives you all the feels. Yes. I agree with you.
What's the tissue rating?
Say that again.
What's the tissue rating?
Yeah, it's low.
0
yeah,
tissue.
I think it's low.
Happy tears, maybe.
Maybe happy tears.
Yeah,
like
maybe happy tears.
Out of
valid tears.
Yeah.
Good.
I do feel like that's the book that ends up on every single one of the book chats that I do. I'm like, look, I know that what you asked for was a historical period drama, but what you actually need is a charming romp about some abandoned foster kids, some of whom are like, I don't know, dragons and antichrist, but the love story between their guardian and the guy who's inspecting the orphanage to make sure they're being well cared for is wonderful. It's beautiful.
It's so wonderful.
Everyone needs it. Well, my friends, I don't want to keep us too much longer because I know we've already held you late. Please check us out at Book Chat. Check out all of the books that we've just recommended, and we will be we'll be sending you an email in the next couple of days asking, A, how'd the program go for you? and B, sending out a list of all of the different books that we've just recommended in case you didn't take copious amounts of notes or you forgot the authors and need help looking them up. So more books coming your way. Did everybody have a good time?
Yes, it was so wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much for coming. Also, I've written down a few other recommendations too, but if you've got any more, send them our way. Just respond to email with 1,000 more. Thanks, Ashley. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Joshua. This sounds
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.